Hello, I'm Yana Shlevinsky and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. Georgia is at crossroads and has been so for a couple of weeks now, following elections which most of the opposition believes were rigged. The Georgian Dream Party, the pro-Russian formation that rules Georgia today, is doubling down on its efforts to push the country in the direction that's nowhere near where most of the population would like it to go. So the European Union officials have arrived in Georgia to talk about it, but they didn't receive any sort of warm welcome there. Quite the opposite, in fact. So what is the Georgian Dream Party planning? What are they going to do following these elections? Also, what can the European Union do to save the aspirations of the Georgian people? We're going to talk about this and more with our guest today, Nino Kalandadze, Executive Director of the Chavechadze Center, joining us from Tbilisi. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning and thank you for having me. Most importantly, thank you for keeping Georgia in focus.
You're most welcome. It is an important matter because it does show that sometimes you really do get a situation whereby the people want one thing, the government unfortunately wants a very different thing. So now this is the main question here. Why did the European Union officials who arrived in Georgia receive such a lukewarm welcome? Perhaps even that is saying too much, given the statements that were made by the country's government officials.
Good morning again. Indeed, these are historic moments for Georgia. We are hosting 8 EU representatives who are attending the rally, cheering on thousands of demonstrators and calling Tbilisi a true capital of Europe. This is obviously a clear sign of support for Georgia's democracy and its EU aspiration, but most importantly, a sign of clear understanding of what's at stake, not only for Georgia, but for the entire region and European security. Now, to set the context, Georgian Dream, or rather the Russian Dream, as we increasingly call them, has been rigging elections and hijacking results from day one. Many, including myself, believe that last democratic elections and peaceful transition of power took place in 2012. Since then, Russian influence has infiltrated Georgia's security services, leaving no real chances to re-elect the government or outvote the oligarch. They have consistently used the same tactics, manipulating the pre-election landscape, dominating information channels, spreading Russian disinformation, intimidating the opposition, controlling financing state institutions, buying votes, etc. However, for a long time, as people inside and outside the country naively believed this government was Western-leaning, it was challenging to prove election manipulation. However, this time they have outdone even themselves. Along with all their usual tactics, the violation of ballot secrecy was on such a massive scale that it seems almost deliberate to further push the EU away and make European capitals question Georgia's candidacy status. So in my understanding, and it was very it was easily to foresee that they would not meet the European representatives because, firstly, they have nothing to say, and secondly, as one of them rightfully put it, it's a very Soviet style of communication. When you don't like what they have to tell you or when they do not disagree with you, you just block them and you don't meet with them. So this is a very clear game here that has been taking place, that now when we are getting or should be getting closer to opening the negotiations, the Russian proxy is trying to do everything to put it on hold and push it away. Now, given the circumstances, along with a growing geopolitical consensus on who is really behind this ruling party, the messages we have been hearing, including yesterday's, are very clear. These elections were neither free nor fair. An international independent investigation is needed to determine the scale and systematic nature of the falsification, as well as the extent of Russian interference, which is obviously key to European security. We are also calling for non-recognition of the results to delegitimize those in power and ultimately to initiate new elections. Now, knowing that the current government has little to lose, we all understand they won't step down voluntarily or respond to conventional pressure, such as people outside in the streets or statements from foreign capitals. On a positive note, for the first time in independent Georgia's history, there is unprecedented consolidation among the opposition political parties, the civil society, the public, and the international community. This chain is highly interdependent. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you mentioned that, the opposition is becoming more unified, but also that it is difficult to dislodge the Georgian Dream Party. You've mentioned there is an infiltration of the state services, the state apparatus. So what can be done? Because you're also suggesting that perhaps they might not really want European integration. I mean, that's hardly news by now. They are moving away from it. Perhaps they want to be pushed away by the EU and just say, oh, it's their fault. But the EU obviously is going to say, well, you have been enacting pieces of legislation which are contrary to European law and all that. The question is, what leverage does the European Union have if the Georgian Dream Party does not want to join the EU, telling them you're not going to join the EU? Well, this will do them hardly any damage. So what else can be done?
Well, firstly, we are already on the right track. It is a combination of many components, obviously internally and externally. First, the civil society and the public must keep pressure on political parties to prevent them from yielding, because there is a lot of pressure on them from the ruling party, obviously. The political parties, in turn, need to work with the OSCE and ODA and international capitals to ensure the final report reflects reality and not political correctness. Again, the optimism is limited, as you say, because as we also anticipate the possibility of force being used against the peaceful demonstrators. We also believe they will try together regardless, no matter what is happening outside. We also believe Russian forces may be embedded within Georgia's interior forces, ready to crack down on the population. So this is all very real and also pretty well anticipated among the population. Now, what the European Union can do, besides the obvious support we have been receiving, is to actually understand fully what we are dealing with and who we are dealing with. Again, this is in Georgia. This is not a semi-democracy now. It is also not authoritarian regime getting stronger. It is becoming a dictatorship. It is definitely becoming a Russian-style dictatorship, as we know it in the region, in our neighborhood, and beyond. And Europe, or in the collective West, as we used to call it, needs to address the political players as dictators. Understand they really have little to lose. They will not. They cannot be subjected to conventional pressures. So additional measures are needed, such as individual sanctions, but also sanctions that may harm the country as such, its economy and the people's interests. But again, it is at this moment, it seems like it is a last chance for us to get away from Russian influence. And this is it's now no time to negotiate or compromise.
So it is a bleak prospect, like you're saying. Because when you look at Belarus, for example, Lukashenko rigged elections. He's been doing so for years. He has been labeled as a dictator. He actually welcomes it. He says, yes, I'm the last dictator in the European Union. I mean, in Europe generally, not in the European Union, obviously, my bad. But anyway, does it change anything? Well, not much, because during the last time that the protests engulfed the country, some people say not enough was being done to support the Belarusians. They came out of the streets. They risked their life and limb. What happened? A crackdown and another descent even deeper into authoritarianism. So this is a dangerous moment. Do you think there might be enough of a momentum within society to rise up, to stage massive demonstrations and to drive the government out? Because regrettably, it kind of does seem like the only conclusive way to change this dangerous course. But also it is dangerous in itself because it poses a risk to those involved, right?
When it comes to assessing the current situation, it hardly can get worse. Because this is a decisive moment, as you rightfully put it. If we lose this battle, there will be no stability or security in the region, and Russian dominance will remain in place for years to come. For us, there is no going back. Now it's obviously on political decision makers to use the right means of legitimate pressure on dictators. Last week, there was a statement made by the German embassy in Georgia, resembling the example of Berlin Wall, that peaceful revolutions are legitimate and can also happen. Obviously, this is what we want. Now, revolution is a challenging decision in a sense then when you face such a disproportionate balance in force, because the entire force is on the side of the oligarch. The people in the streets are empty-handed, just defending their future and their votes, particularly this time. So a lot will depend how much pressure will put the outside world on dictators that are trying now to hijack the election results and keep Georgia isolated from the civilized world. Again, there are talks about initiating an international investigation. If I'm not wrong, there was a precedent in Serbia. They can be set up an international committee, obviously excluding all the players from the Georgian Dream, initiate an investigation to actually prove the scale, but also the scale of Russian interference, and use this as a pretext to actually go against those who are being committing crimes here in Georgia, to try to it's not just about Georgia not getting European membership. It's about Georgia losing its independence and sovereignty for a very long time.
So it is about the future of Georgia, but also the European Union needs to realize that it partially holds that future in its hands. And it is a time to act, perhaps one of the last moments where this will be possible. Nino Kalandadze was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.